All right, so as promised, we are now going to transform our sine and cosine functions. So the first thing we're going to talk about is changing the amplitude. Amplitude is when you have a number here out front, either of sine and cosine. The amplitude is half the distance between the maximum and minimum values, and it's given by the absolute value of a. So if we go back, let me see if we can get back to those other ones. If we go back and look here, on our original, our maximum value is 1, and our minimum value is -1. So our amplitude is just this distance right here. So cosine has an amplitude of 1, and so does sine, okay? It goes up 1 and down 1. Okay, so that's the amplitude. So we can change how high and low our graphs go. So we are going to graph 1/3 sine x and 3 sine x on the same axis. This is going to be a challenge for me. Okay, so we know that this is a sine function, so it starts on the origin, on its upward slope, and we know that it takes 2 pi to get through its whole cycle. So here's pi, here's 2 pi. Just for ease, I'm not going to write these in, but this is pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. All right, and let me erase that little mark so we don't get confused. This first one, here's 1, and here's -1, -2, -3, here's 2 and 3. Okay, so sine starts on its upward slope, so it goes up, back, down, back. It takes 2 pi to get through that whole cycle. So that means halfway through its full cycle, it hits in the middle. So we're going to go up, hit, down, hit. Now, the highest we end up is only 1/3. So here, and then it goes down 1/3 over here. So this is what the first one looks like. We just made it a little smaller. When we graph this, when you do it on homework and quizzes and tests, I like to see 2 full cycles. So if you would, go the other direction. So go in the negative direction. So we're going to go down, hit, up, hit. We're only going to go down to 1/3 and up to 1/3 and back. Okay, so that is the 1/3 sine x. So now we're going to do the other function, 3 sine x. This still hits at the same spots. It starts on its upward slope. It's going to go through a full cycle of 2 pi. It's going to hit halfway through, but this time it's going to max out at 3 and go down to -3. Wow, that's a really shaky curve. And the other direction, down 3, up 3. Okay, and again, I apologize. But that's what happens when we change the amplitude. Same thing happens with cosine. It's just starts on its crest instead of at 0, 0. Also, if we have a negative value of a, this is on the back side of your notes. If we have a negative value of a, that is a reflection. That flips the whole thing over. So that's a reflection over the x-axis. So for the sine function, what that would mean if you just have y equals negative sine x. So normally it starts on its upward slope. It goes up, hit, down, hit. This is going to go the opposite way. Down, hit, up, hit, and vice versa. If we are doing the negative cosine, remember normally cosine starts at its crest. If we reflect it across the x-axis, it's going to start at the bottom. So it'll go through its full cycle and wind up down at the bottom. Go the other way too. Okay. And of course you can have like -3, which is just make the amplitude bigger. All right, so let's take a look at our next transformation. Now we said normally the period of our function is 2 pi. We can change that as well. Okay, if you have a number right here in front of the x, either on sine or cosine, what that does is it changes the period. It changes how quickly it goes through a full cycle. So normally our period is 2 pi. If you have a number in front of the x, the period is going to be 2 pi divided by b. I'll show you what this looks like. So we have y equals sine of x over 2. So first we'll look at the amplitude. That's the number out in front, which is just a 1. So that means it's going to go up to 1 and down 1. No big deal. And then we're going to look at the period. Normally it's 2 pi, but in this case, this has a number in front of the x. That number is 1/2. So we're going to do 2 pi divided by a half. Dividing by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by a reciprocal. So our period is going to be 4 pi. So what this means is that instead of doing its full cycle in 2 pi, like we've seen, we need to extend this. It's going to take 3 pi, 4 pi to get through its full cycle. So this is a sine function. It starts at 0, 0 on its upward slope. It's going to go up, hit, down, hit. And that entire up, hit, down, hit is going to take 4 pi. So halfway in between those, we go up and hit. So halfway in between is going to be right here. And remember, it's only going up to 1 and negative 1. So it's going to go up, hit, down, hit. And you can see this is a lot more stretched out than before, because before we were doing this whole process in 2 pi. So it was going up, hit, down, hit, that yellow one. So this has stretched it out. Really, we should do this in the other direction. I don't have quite enough space, but in the other direction, we'll go like this. And obviously, you would want to put the actual marks in here. Okay, that would be negative 4 pi. All right, in the next video, we will do our last transformation for today.